Hello, I'm Bill Fox, and this program is about East Brunswick. The other day I was going through some papers in my office and I found this 1958 version of the East Brunswick Master Plan. And it really makes fascinating reading. 1958 and earlier was a time of tremendous growth for East Brunswick. Population in 1950 was about 5,000, and by 1958 it was well on its way to 20,000. This master plan, in terms of population, projects that by 1975 there would be 58,000 people in East Brunswick, and by 1980, 8 years ago, 70,000. In fact, our population today is approximately 42,000 to 43,000. So that hasn't been realized. Then there's a whole section on transportation, and in the discussion of traffic and transportation, there are some things that we'll recognize and some things that were good ideas that never got done. One of the things that we would recognize today is that this is the first conceptual plan that I'm aware of for the new Riders Lane. A lot of people think New Riders Lane was a recent idea, but in fact, as this document indicates, the idea of a road in that location as an alternate to other paths through the township is not a new one at all. This plan anticipated several things in our region that have not come to pass. One of the major ones was a connector from the turnpike over to the shore in the vicinity of Middletown or Toms River, depending on whether it went to the north or the south. That has never happened. But another thing that we would recognize is the statement about Route 18. Route 18 at that time was basically a three-lane road on its way to becoming four. There were no grade separated crossings, and what this plan says is that Route 18 has about reached its capacity as a carrier of through traffic with average daily volumes as high as 25,000 vehicles. The next statement deals with the road that wasn't built. With the South River Expressway proposed to absorb existing traffic on Route 18, its future development should be accented toward improving its function as a growing center of regional shopping facilities. That part of what they said has indeed happened, but the traffic, as we all know, has continued to increase. Where it was 25,000 vehicles a day and 30 years ago, today it's somewhere between 60 and 70,000 depending on when you count. And the South River Expressway, so-called, was never constructed, so that Route 18 continues to be a problem. There is some effort underway to try to do something about Route 18 and try to get the State Department of Transportation to move along in improving the highway. And with me today to talk about those efforts are Doris Fleming, who is chairman of the Redevelopment Agency, Alan Rehert, who is a member of the agency and has chaired an ad hoc committee or task force on Route 18, which we'll hear more about later, and Greg Fehrenbach, who is our township administrator. Thank you all for being here. Doris, I'd like to begin by asking you a fairly broad question. Why is the Redevelopment Agency interested in Route 18?
Well, essentially when we began, and we have not changed our focus, we believe that Route 18 is a vital organ in the entire development and the stability of this community. And if Route 18 is not improved upon, if we do not do our best with it, if we do not make it economically sound and much better aesthetically as well, move the traffic through the community and make it better for our business community to have a flow of traffic that is efficient, the township shall suffer. And certainly 18 is there. We have improved some things, but as you know, it has been slow, and there is much to be done. And the traffic in the region has grown to numbers we did not anticipate. And I am here 30 years and have seen the plan before, as we said before we began. And some of the things just were never done. And perhaps because they were not, we're not as well off now as we might have been.
Is there a connection between the traffic flow in the view of the Redevelopment Agency and the ability to improve the appearance and economic stability of Route 18?
Yes. We feel that the overall thrust of cutting down on the ingress and egress, for example, on 18, if that were possible, and we have endeavored to act as a catalyst with some of the small shopping areas to see if there could be a mutual entrance rather than many, and the theory being that if you move the traffic in sections from point A to point B more efficiently, that it will improve the flow and therefore the traffic itself will be expeditiously moved along the highway. And this would be beneficial to the community at large and to the business community. We're acutely conscious that it's necessary to keep that in mind, that the business community must be also considered each step of the way.
Has the agency done studies of the traffic on Route 18?
Yes, we did hire, as you know, an agent, a planner, to come in with a conceptual plan for the development of the Golden Triangle, and in conjunction with that, we did do part of the study of the traffic flow on Route 18. It needs, again, to be updated because things do occur that change it constantly, and as the ad hoc committee has developed their information, we know that having the support and active money from the Department of Transportation is one of the vital ingredients to get the thing moving.
Let me turn to Greg now. Greg, maybe you could tell us a little bit of how the ad hoc committee came to be.
There was a goal-setting session that took place last June that included yourself, the members of the council, and members of administrative staff. In addition, the then chairman of the redevelopment agency, Bob Schaffhauser, was part of that goal-setting session. One of the concerns that grew out of that goal-setting session had to do with how some immediate improvements might be able to be made to Route 18. And there was some discussion about issues of computerized signalization and specific intersections that were problems. Coming out of that goal-setting session, Bob Schaffhauser went back to the redevelopment agency and, as I understand it, spoke with various members of that agency. And I ended up speaking with both Bob and Doris Fleming on the issue following that. And they then submitted to you a request for the creation of a special committee whose principal purpose would be to develop a consensus around what kinds of improvements to Route 18 might be acceptable.
Now, when you say consensus, that implies that there were a lot of ideas.
We had seen a series of ideas presented most recently by Goodkind and O'Day, who had submitted a report to the council in December of 1986. And there were previous proposals for at-grade intersections, grade-separated intersections, other kinds of improvements on Route 18. There had been apparently proposals that were made in the past, none of which I'm familiar with, that had been rejected by various elements of the community because of its adverse impacts. And what Bob was seeking, and the way his letter read, it indicated that these alternatives that had existed, and whatever new alternatives might come up, should be studied by a group of people who represented a series of sectors in the community. And based on that, the redevelopment agency suggested to you and the council a series of representatives. Those were included in addition to some others that both you and the council added to that list.
Now, just one brief follow-up. What's a good kind of day?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. The township entered into a contract with a consulting firm, an engineering consulting firm, whose name is Goodkind and O'Day, who produced something in the order of about 12 sets of improvements for various intersections on Route 18 running from Edgeboro Road to Hillsdale Road. Those improvements were reviewed by the planning board and the council in late '86, early '87, and were the principal document that was reviewed by the Route 18 Ad Hoc Improvement Committee.
Okay. Alan, who was on the committee with you?
We had a broad representation which brought together people from the planning board, architects, developers, various property associations. We had someone representing the police and safety, Board of Education. Greg was very active in support. The council, Jackson Agra was a member. A very broad cross-section, people that represented very different points of view, but a very common interest in finding a way to identify something that we could do. I mean, there was a lot of frustration. I had a number of discussions with people who would call it yet one more committee to appease the fact that we couldn't do anything. So we got to a point where it was clear we wanted to do something. As Greg described, because I asked a lot, what could we do as a committee of citizens, basically? And what I was told was, and it has proven to be very true, is that what's needed is a consensus, and the reason you need a consensus within the town is that the appropriation of money, both from within our capability, but more importantly outside the state and the federal support, will always go toward a place where there's consensus, where the community is saying to the larger group, we as a community believe this is something we want, we have a specific idea, and if you do this, we'll all be happy. It won't just be this part of the town or that part of the town or whatever. So we had a very broad representation. The planning board was, the planning department, Bill Tanner and Greg Pekulski represented some professional support as well.
When did the task force start its work?
It was set up last summer. We had our first meeting in August, and then we met monthly.
And has it completed its work as far as the task force is concerned?
Yes, we were charged to do something by February at my request. And we now have 2 resolutions that have been passed by the council. One directed at addressing improvements that can result from computerization of the signals, and another which is to move ahead toward engineering studies leading to environmental impact and other necessary steps to assess what can be done more dramatically in terms of an overpass at the worst bottleneck on Route 18 around Edgeboro Road.
I want to talk about those in more detail in a few minutes, but another question I had was, how did the task force go about doing its job? I mean, what did you do?
Yeah, we got together, and here we were, a group of people who, for the most part, didn't know each other. What we discussed a lot is what it means to develop a consensus around anything. And we felt that to get started, we should find something that would not be difficult to form a consensus. As you well know, there has been a policeman at Narracon Place controlling a light, which has had, for people like me that go through Route 18 every morning, some substantial visible impact. So what we did is we selected the computerized signaling and the improvements to signals as a first step. And the focus of the initial meetings was just to see if we could get consensus on that. Our second meeting, we listed the 10 reasons, the 10 things that it would take to get consensus on that. There were questions like, if you improve Route 18, what would happen to the school buses trying to get across Route 18? Probably the most serious question, and one that still is of interest, is if you focus the attention of the town on the signals, would you then take focus off of anything more dramatic? Mm-hmm. So something as obvious, perhaps, and which actually had been approved at some level, of improving the signals, there were still things to discuss in order to develop consensus.
Let me ask you this a broader question. Someone wrote in the paper, newspaper the other day, I think it was a letter to the editor. They said nothing will help but to make every intersection on Route 18 a grade-separated crossing, which means an overpass or so on. And if we can't do that, we shouldn't, I mean, it's not worth the effort. What's your response to that kind of thinking?
Well, I guess I come from the school that you have to do things in stages. The state has asked us, and we've all want to see a plan that covers the entire length of the roadway. But no matter what you do, you have to implement it in steps. So an approach that says we should do all or nothing will probably lead to nothing for a long time. An approach that says you should have a feeling about or a set of ideas and objectives as to where you're going, and then implement them in stages, preferably the most impactful first, is what I would see to be a reasonable approach.
Now, I understand that you met with the state a couple of times in the course of this. What was the reception there?
I think the state is supportive. They see the computerization in particular of Route 18 as something that they feel would show for New Jersey and perhaps for the country what it means to take a thoroughfare of 8 miles that cuts through a number of towns and improve the traffic in a substantial way through the application of techniques that are now available. And they identified places where they're doing this with some of the complex circles around the state, where they hold people back until the right time and then gate the traffic on and off the circle or onto the circle in ways that maximize the flow. They feel that the Route 18 arrangement is another one that will have we'll see a lot of benefit from similar techniques.
Since that seems to be something that can be done relatively quickly, maybe, let's talk about that in some more detail now. When they talk about computerizing the signals, does that mean there'll be a computer at each signal, or what exactly is it that this program involves?
Yeah, the way that the lights work on a road like Route 18 is that you can set them up so that you start off at a reference point, say at one end of the road, and then you have the lights in sequence go to green at various times, and you can set that up by your history as to how long it takes a moving group of cars to go from one light to the other. So the first thing that you want to be able to do is to do that accurately, essentially to have the first light say, all right, I'm going green, and tell the rest of them in 20 seconds, the second one goes in 30 seconds or 50 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever. The current arrangement that we have, some of the lights are connected together, but the technology or the clocks, if you will, that they're using are not stable, so that it's not being done in a reliable fashion. There are also some operational arrangements where the wiring that controls the lights goes through a station, I think, in another town, which may or may not be turned on. So there are some basic operational things that can be fixed. This first stage of simply replacing the control mechanisms at each light can be done fairly quickly. We think it can be done this year, and for a small part of the total cost. That will have an effect of allowing us to have the lights work much more effectively based on historical patterns. So if you have a good history and you know what normally happens at 8 o'clock in the morning, you can really set it up so it's fairly effective.
That doesn't deal with the situation where there's an accident or
Right.
a disabled vehicle or something, though, does it?
Right. What the computers do, now that you get into the next stage, is you say, if I really want to have impact at any given time, where there's some unusual event, whether it's an accident or some particular shopping event and causing a lot of traffic to converge in one place, what you'd really like to know is what is the state of the traffic along the road, and then adjust the lights based on the traffic at a given time. Now, it's not only knowing where the traffic is. What we learned at the meeting with the state is that by having the computers, you can actually cause the traffic to behave a certain way. So if you know, for example, that cars are entering Route 18, say from Piscataway or from the Old Bridge area, and you can say, take a group of them and say, all right, I'm going to take this group of 20 or 30 cars, and I'm going to think of them now as what they call a platoon. And you sort of hold them at a red light for some number of seconds, then you let them go. They will travel along as a group.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, you can create open spaces along the road, which is where the side traffic should be coming in and not have any impact on the capacity of the road. So it's a combination of knowing what's going on and then actually causing the traffic to be more regular.
Now, the area they're talking about is not just East Brunswick, is
Right.
it? How far does it extend?
It extends from the bridge which goes into Piscataway at River Road to the southernmost part of East Brunswick.
Now, doing the computer part of this is more than just changing out the clocks.
Right.
What's involved in getting that system going?
Yeah, the ability to determine the traffic requires putting sensors in the roads, and both and knowing at various places along the road what the rate of movement is and the amount of cars. So that is a more extensive effort. It's more expensive and it takes more time.
How much would this total program cost?
The estimates of the initial step is somewhere $100,000 to $150,000, which gives us some pretty good improvements initially. The longer-term step of the full monitors in the streets and the computers is estimated to be over $2 million or so.
Doris, has the agency looked at this particular plan, and
Yes.
have you endorsed it?
Well, Alan has made the presentation, of course, to the agency, and we are very supportive of it. It is a step that needs to be taken, and anything that is an improvement, and it's a proven technology, so we're not dabbling in something experimental. The cost factor is very real, and that's reasonable, and the long-range plan, of course, is something that we must address, but that can wait. But this would get us moving. So yes, we agreed.
Greg, we have some money for the purpose of the computerized signals, isn't that correct?
The township was successful last year in obtaining $300,000 in host community benefits from the counties, the 3 counties, and I guess portion of Middlesex County that were utilizing Edgeboro landfill from about last September through last December. It was a slight modification to what the township had been receiving, and the amount we're supposed to receive is $300,000 for that purpose. The arrangement that we've been discussing with the Department of Transportation is to utilize those monies as seed money to be $300,000 toward the entire cost of the project, which Alan just estimated it being something over $2 million.
And I gather that the State Department of Transportation officials are receptive to cooperating in this way.
They like the project very much. They particularly like the possibility of the municipality supplying some money. The other advantage for them is that in the event the township can supply that money quickly, they believe that they can acquire a lot of the hardware they need to be able to make some improvements that could be in place before the end of this year. The other element of it is that it shows some local state participation, partnership, that increases their ability to be able to get money from other sources. And all of
The
these
federal
things.
government, I assume.
Well, the federal government, but I think it also has an impact on what they believe they can get out of the legislature. If they're seeing that the municipalities are willing, that a municipality, there aren't very many of us, that this municipality is willing to participate financially in a project, now they've got something that they can really hit the legislators with in order to be able to get more money for roadway improvements.
Alan, how much, is there any estimate of what magnitude of improvement the initial step would be, that is, getting the good clocks and getting all the signals synchronized?
There isn't a good estimate. You know, a lot of it has to do with the way you feel when you go down Route 18 and whether you stop and start and stop and start. When you think of an 8-mile stretch, and if you could go 60 miles an hour, which, just to make the numbers easy, it would take 8 minutes. If you're going 10 miles an hour, it would take, you know, a lot longer, and a lot of times you feel like you're going 10 miles an hour. So what you get in terms of average numbers, you hear about it could be the total improvements from where a town might start to where they might end could be anywhere like 50%. A lot of the improvement will come in the initial step, and it's really not clear. The state wasn't able to give us good definitive numbers of how much it would be improved. I think our best measure is the impact of one light and one action at Narracon Place and the impact that that's having.
Doris, one of the concerns that I've heard expressed is that if we move the traffic too fast on Route 18, nobody will stop and shop in the retail areas. Is that something that's been considered?
Well, that's something that we have been acutely conscious of in the agency. We, at the present time, have been talking with the Chamber of Commerce, for example, and getting their input through Marty Glass, who is the incoming president of the Chamber and a member of the agency, of what the concerns are. And as I said to you earlier, the concern for the business community of East Brunswick must always be related to Route 18, because they are Route 18 and the impact upon them affects all of us. So yes, but we felt that working and getting them to develop, even if it's a small strip of stores, minimizing the ingress and egress would give them better flow of traffic, and anything that cuts down on delay is an improvement, and certainly if the traffic moves in an orderly fashion, people will stop. I think right now a lot of people don't shop on 18 because they just don't want to get caught and what they perceive as too long a period of time. It may not be. As Alan pointed out, it is a matter of how you feel about it. But the business community is much concerned, and we are concerned too. But we are working together on it. We don't have any conflict over that. They're aware an improvement is necessary. And they are supportive of this plan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Good.
another problem.
Good. Alan, I don't recall whether you said how long the second phase of this would be. If we proceed with it, when would the complete project of improving the synchronization and putting in the sensors and computer be completed?
I think the state estimated for us that it would be somewhere in the 2 to 3 year time frame.
Mm-hmm. So that really, as Route 18 goes, is a fairly rapid response if we're able to cause that to happen. The second thing I know that you mentioned that you looked at is the worst intersection, I suppose, on the highway, and that's the intersection of Route 18, Edgeboro Road, and Old Bridge Turnpike. What kinds of things did you look at there?
All right, there, it was clear to the group, we had gotten to the point where signalization was something we wanted to do, that that to move forward, the feeling was we ought to look at this worst intersection now. One of the reasons it's the worst intersection, in addition to the various public awareness because of the garbage truck incidents last year, is the way it's laid out. You have a many-phase light. You have intersections, there's 5 or 6 different phases that the light is chopped up into so that different traffic can move at different times. That dramatically reduces the amount of time for any through traffic. You have roads coming in at angles, which also reduces the amount of traffic that it can handle. You have the off-ramp, which goes by Lomans, and at most busy times actually backs up and takes an entire lane out of traffic for people that are familiar with that going south. So it's an intersection that has much more impact than just being an intersection. It has a lot of safety implications, and it has a lot of backing up into other areas. We had as input when we started the studies that were mentioned by Good, Kind, and O'Day, and they had looked at several approaches. One was to simply restructure the way that traffic gets on and off of Route 18 and how you get across it. Trying to do what's called an at-grade separation. Effectively, don't put in any bridges because that takes a lot more time, but restructure things, make the off-ramps larger so the traffic wouldn't back up onto Route 18. Straighten out some of the roads, things like that. We looked at that and we were very much trying to find a solution that would do that because that could be done much more quickly, we felt, than an overpass. We also looked at an overpass, which Good, Kind, and O'Day had also proposed, and this meant that there would be a bridge in the Edgeboro Road vicinity, which would eliminate the light at Edgeboro Road and would give the maximum impact in terms of capacity on the road. The question was, if you did that, could you start with an at-grade separation? Could you start with a way of doing things that didn't require the overpass, put in a road structure that anticipated a later step so that you could reuse most of the investment as you went onto a bridge? And so we looked at that kind of a plan.
Now, I know we've got some maps here. Is this a good time to display one of these?
Yeah, these show the approach that was ultimately discussed, and they represent 2 approaches to an overpass. If you can see the area, Route 18, of course, is going vertically in blue, and you can see a bridge crossing Route 18, in this case at Edgeboro Road. And you see a number of access ramps, some of which use existing roads like Renee Road and Old Bridge Turnpike, and others which are new, such as extensions to roads that reach all the way over to Edgeboro Road. The characteristic to focus on here is that there is an overpass, that there is some construction of new roads over in the South River side of Old Bridge Turnpike, providing access from Edgeboro Road through to Route 18 into Old Bridge Turnpike into the overpass. And it turns out that those characteristics, an overpass, an extension road that provides a new way to get to Edgeboro Road, get in and out of Edgeboro Road, and an extension across Old Bridge Turnpike to Route 18 are sort of common denominators to all the plans. In this particular plan, there is a fairly large amount of travel time to accomplish the various movements, making lefts and rights off of various intersections in the nearby environment. And there are particular businesses that are affected, as will be the case for any of these plans. This is a situation where the businesses have grown up, and to put in either an at-grade separation or a grade separated intersection is going to have impact on some businesses.
What does it mean that it'll have impact?
Well, ideally that there will be a relocation of those businesses, probably in a nearby area, but it would mean that those businesses would have to relocate.
Now this is another scheme, and I guess we both want to emphasize that these are just concepts at this point, and nothing in concrete for sure.
Right. The important thing here, this is for the various movements, lefts and right off of Lake and Old Bridge Turnpike and the like. This requires much less movement, therefore much less highway. It does have, as in the previous plan, an overpass. In this case, it's more in the Lake Avenue vicinity. It does have the similar roads that are coming across from Edgeboro Road to Old Bridge Turnpike, and then the extension to Route 18. So you can see some common denominators in this plan and the other, and you can see some differences. It's located in a different place. In both cases, we've eliminated the light at Edgeboro Road, and we've created the needed overpass to accomplish the traffic. And in both plans, some businesses are going to be relocated during the implementation, but the particular businesses would vary depending on the plan.
Now what's the next step? Have these plans been reviewed with the State Department of Transportation?
We've discussed the conceptual approach, and what they have asked us to do is now to move forward toward a more detailed assessment, to go through the necessary steps of environmental impact, which is a set of procedures to understand the effect of any of these kind of changes would have in general on the overall environment of the community, and a set of rules and regulations that have to be followed. So we're into that stage of now beginning to set up the arrangements so that that can be done. I guess Greg has been in contact with the Department of Transportation about exactly how to do that.
Let me ask one question, and I want to get some comment from Greg. What is the estimated cost of the improvement to this intersection?
Yeah, there's estimates for construction, and there's the need to include some estimate for the impact of right-of-way and the impact on buildings, because one of the things the committee felt strongly about is that the laws that exist and the procedures that exist for compensating those that might be relocated would clearly have to be justly applied. And we took a guess that the number somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million to cover that total package is something that we should probably keep in mind.
Greg, to back up now, what stage are we at with this particular proposal? And before you talk about that, a question before that. In this case, there is some money available also for this purpose, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Or will be soon?
There actually is some money presently available, and then hopefully there will be some available in the future. The money that is presently available is that the Planning Board, when they granted approvals to what is now called Cross Point and what is now called Route 18 Central, a condominium complex and a shopping center, were able to obtain commitments of monies for the purposes of improving the circulation in the area. We believe that those agreements that were reached generate something in the vicinity of $400,000 in addition to the ability to go for future special benefit assessments, which could generate some additional monies. So we now have $400,000 sitting on the side. In addition, the council had appropriated, under your recommendation of about a year ago, $100,000 for doing some work at this intersection in this area, which provides another $100,000. So now we have about $500,000. Thirdly, the township, in its negotiations with the Middlesex County Utilities Authority for the ability to use the Edgeboro landfill, entered into an agreement that a part of which should generate something in excess of $2.5 million for improvements at this intersection. So now we're up to something in excess of $3 million over the next 3.5 to 4 years. Lastly, there has been the possibility, though it is not clear where that is going, to obtain some portion of the right-of-way expense and some roadway expense from a developer in South River, what is called the North End Industrial Development Project, the developer being Frank Greek and Sons Associates, who would be able to deal in one of those common denominators, essentially the connector between Route 18 and Old Bridge Turnpike in the vicinity of where the existing jug handle is located. We estimate the cost of that being somewhere in the vicinity of $600,000 to $700,000, which means that the township would, through a series of mechanisms, be able to contribute as much as $3.7 million to the project that is estimated at $15 million.
So there's still a lot to go.
There's still a lot to go, but some of the advantages are these. First, we would be one of the very few, possibly the only municipality in the state that would be generating monies to help the Department of Transportation solve one of their problems. Secondly, the Department of Transportation, through Commissioner Gluck, has identified host community facilities as receiving a priority in their ranking system, and so that should bring it up a little higher. The reason why those two things should be of concern is that, as the Deputy Commissioner told us in the last meeting, they have literally hundreds of requests similar to this sitting before them that they have to act on. The pipeline from the monies that were just authorized for the increase in the fuel tax that hasn't even been put in place yet are already spent. And there is...
Do you know how much that is?
They're estimating $338 million. And they've got projects sitting in line right now, already ready to eat that money up. Now, the advantage we have is that we provide some seed money. There has been, up until last year, money that has gone away from New Jersey because the state hasn't been able to match it from the Federal Department of Transportation. And in addition, because of the priority ranking, there's the possibility that we would be able to bump some other projects. And the whole name of this game is bumping other projects. With these sort of things working on our side, there is a much higher probability of getting this improvement done within a reasonable time frame. Otherwise, we could easily be looking at the year 2010, 2020 before the state would even look at doing anything to this intersection.
Another 30 years.
Another 30 years.
Oh, my.
All right, what do we have to do to get the state to really put us at the top or near the top of their priority list? I guess what the situation you're describing is that Route 18, Edgeboro Road, Old Bridge Turnpike is not the worst intersection in the state.
It's way down on their list.
That there are many others that are as bad or worse.
At least according to their assessment. We may dispute that, but according to their assessment. Just an aside, I've always wondered why Route 1 gets all the attention it gets, but one only has to think that that's the main route to Trenton. And that's where most of the people from the Department of Transportation move along when they're trying to get to work. We've been thinking about trying to situate the Department of Transportation somewhere on either end of Route 18, so they may have to experience that. The council made a major decision the other evening in authorizing and going along with the recommendation of the Route 18 Ad Hoc Committee in doing two things. One, authorizing the township to enter into an interlocal services agreement with the Department of Transportation to achieve some of the objectives that have been identified in the report that Mr. Rehert put together on the computerized signalization. The second major thing that they agreed to do was to work cooperatively with the Department of Transportation to do a preliminary engineering feasibility report, I think those are the right words, which will essentially say, here is the problem, and define it physically, identify a series of options that are available that would resolve the problem, similar to what this committee has done, and would utilize the work of this committee, and would then evaluate those options, let's say there are 5 options, according to a series of cost-benefit criteria. Once that report were completed, then the Department of Transportation would be able to proceed to do their environmental analysis and get it into the pipeline for state and federal funding.
Any sense of how long that process might take?
I'm grabbing a number out of the air like I did the price of the project. I suggested it was $75,000. I suggest it's a 9-month process to get to the point of being able to do the environmental analysis.
And the environmental analysis might take how long?
I suspect that environmental analysis is easily a 1-year project.
And how long after that before the DOT would know?
Now I'm really groping. Up until now, I'm basing it on experience. I would say that we are probably somewhere in the vicinity of plus or minus 4 years from today before the state would make a decision of we proceed, we don't proceed, and at that point, the majority of the design work would have been completed.
And after that, no doubt it's 2-3 years before
It's probably
the
easily
project could be
a
completed.
24-month construction process.
So we're talking about long-term projects.
We're talking about a long-term project with what we hope are long-term solutions. The project has to be considered viable 20 years from the date they decide to go ahead with it. So that there have to be 20-year projections done on the project so that they feel as if it has a life worthy of the amount of money that's going into it.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think as the signs say, this short-term inconvenience is for a long-term benefit, something like that.
So the long term in this case is at least 20 years.
At least 20 years.
Well, this isn't the only intersection on Route 18 that's a problem. And this is a general question for any of you. What's the potential? Can we, I mean, it's not even clear to me what exactly people want on Route 18. I think they would like to be able to drive 60 miles an hour the entire length, as if it were an interstate or a limited access highway, but I don't know that that's ever going to happen and may not even be desirable. But what's the future of Route 18? What's the best we can expect over the next 20 or 25 years in terms of seeing some improvement? What's reasonable to expect, and should we expect to see an improvement? I know that's fairly broad, but I think it's an issue that has to be discussed because, of course, all the time that I've been involved and probably all the time that anybody else has been involved here, Route 18 has been a sore point and something that people would like you to do something about. We've just heard that serious improvements, or physical improvements to Route 18, I should say, are a long-term process. But what if we could wave a magic wand? Is it reasonable to expect that we would see some dramatic improvement in the highway at any time in the future?
If I can jump in, I think there are a couple problems. One is that there are too many purposes that people see Route 18 serving. They see it serving as an interregional link that connects people in Monmouth County with Somerset County. It is seen as, and that's almost a limited access highway, but it is surely not limited access. Secondly, it serves within the municipality as a intra-municipal connector to get from, let's say, the Echo Woods section of the community to Pine Ridge. And that's just for intra-municipal movement. Then it ends up being almost a regional main street in which you have people hopping from curb cut to curb cut trying to get from business to business. Now, the only thing that seems to save that is that most of the inter-regional traffic is during the peak hours, which are before or after most of the shopping time that takes place. But we really do expect too many things from that roadway, and when one thinks of the region, if you're trying to go north-south, your choices are here or about 10 miles east of the Parkway and nothing else. Nothing else crosses the Raritan River. So it seems to me that from a regional transportation standpoint, there's not enough space given for all of the automobiles we've all decided we have to own. Once we go over that and at least say that's an existing condition, now we've got the problem of what can we expect and hope for in the future. I really see it as being a series of Band-Aids. We are simply trying to maintain a present condition. Every traffic analysis that's been done shows significant growth taking place in this region over the next 20 years. And it indicates that it's going to be taking place in sections of the state that are in lower Middlesex and Monmouth County, and in sections of Somerset and Morris County, all of which, in order to get through, are utilizing Route 18. So it seems to me as we start to make the improvements, it's simply going to take care of the traffic that's naturally going to generate. The other intersections that are problems in the municipality, save two, can mostly, it appears from the Good, Kind, and O'Day report, be resolved by relatively minor improvements. And those include widening the intersection of Ruse Lane and putting a slightly better jug handle on it, which would not be excessively expensive and would almost double its capacity. It includes making some minor changes at Arthur Street. The key intersections that are a problem, other than those that the committee addressed, are Tice's Lane and Prospect. And that is where probably the more difficult of the decisions lie, because it is so developed, the land is so expensive, and you have a very peculiar set of movements there. Good, Kind, and O'Day's come up with some suggestions. Some other people have come up with some suggestions. That is going to be the next major nut to crack if we can get over this hurdle.
That doesn't seem to bother the State Department of Transportation. I know when I went to a meeting now several years ago when they announced they were going to fix the Route 130 intersection, which I guess is progressing, but I believe it's been more than 2 years since, maybe 3, since they said they were going to work on it. But someone asked, well, how will you do this? And they said, well, we don't know yet, but either Bradley, Sansone, Ford, or the bowling alley will have to go in order to accommodate the grade-separated crossing. And so it doesn't seem to bother them, but I know that there's a great sensitivity locally about that sort of thing. Let me ask Alan or Doris, is our expectation for Route 18 unrealistic? Should we simply consider that Route 18 is similar to a downtown street in a city, and that the traffic is going to move slowly? You don't expect to drive through the center of a city, and it could be Cincinnati or Atlanta or some other place, at least where you can get to things at high speed. And should people expect to be able to do that on Route 18?
Well, I don't know if they expected. 60 miles an hour was mentioned before. I can't imagine being able to do that. It's frustrating. I think we all have lived here a long time, and those of us who are on redevelopment and have worked on different plans. We've had at least 2 or 3 previous Route 18 study committees, as you know, and the master plans, there have been a few before we actually adopted one in the late 70s. So the traffic on 18 and the problems with Edgeboro in particular, that jug handle, has always been considered a disaster from an engineering standpoint. We've had them and we've survived. I'm concerned actually with what Greg has been saying, because the Regional Plan Association is the prime a group of individuals who did give us a Central Jersey development plan, which indicates total gridlock if we don't do something. We are going to have to look at the fact that our population could double or triple and everyone drives a car. So maybe we should start looking at doing the best we can with 18. It might be more aesthetics than it will be engineeringly efficient, but we have to also look at mass transportation and re-educating at least the younger people to traveling from point A to point B by something other than the automobile. And we don't have that. There is no mass transit to speak of in this whole area. So that is something that has been sorely lacking, and it is something we desperately need.
Does anybody think that there's any chance for revival of the alternate road, what the 58 plan called the South River Expressway, and what I guess the Turnpike Authority had proposed in the late 60s as and early 70s as a Driscoll Expressway? Does anybody have any idea that any of that might be revived?
Well, I can't imagine the Driscoll Expressway becoming a reality again. You know what we went through trying to drive that through Jamesburg Park, and very environmentally sensitive area, which was a new term then, and it was successfully defeated. So I think that a different alternative to that will be necessary, or different technology may be available that you can do it. But I think
Bullet trains or
something. But I remember many years ago, and Jim Bornheimer was on our town council, and he proposed that we have a train parallel to the New Jersey Turnpike. And when you go to World's Fairs and you travel in foreign countries, and I haven't, but people tell me they have trains. You go to Disney World, the elevated trains are there. Maybe this is the sort of thing we're going to have to look at if the population continues to pile into a geographical area where we just don't have the capacity for more automobiles.
I think the key to this lies in what Greg was describing. The town has many uses. If you thought of the uses as occurring largely in different time zones, and you thought about what you want to accomplish in those different time zones, and if we could get some agreement on what we want to accomplish, it amazed me. Well, then what would happen, I think, is the people that are involved would start to come up with some very creative ideas for solving the problem. The thing that amazed me during the committee is that when we started, there were many people that felt there was no solution, there was no consensus, it was just going to be another committee. We moved along and tried a number of options, and the first ones were very difficult to find. Once it was shown that there was an option that seemed to be digestible, within a week or two we had 3, 4, 5 that also were digestible. And it sort of reminds me of how nobody could run the 4-minute mile, and then as soon as someone did, everyone seemed to run the 4-minute mile. So the question to me is, what is it that we want to accomplish, which was your question, I think. That's going to require a lot of discussion to build a consensus over what we want to do as shoppers, as commuters, as people passing through town, how we want to deal with that. If we could agree on what we're trying to accomplish, I think that the people of East Brunswick are quite capable of agreeing on a way of doing it. And our biggest problem seems to be agreeing on what we want to accomplish.
What impact do other, I mean, if we're not going to have a major road from the Turnpike to the shore, and we are going to continue, obviously, to have growth in that area. Olympia and York, even though it's smaller than originally envisioned, is still several thousand homes and many thousand residents. Right in Old Bridge, right on Route 18 and Route 9, and a large number of those people are going to come this way. What, for East Brunswick people, what can we do to give them alternates to Route 18? Will the Riders Lane improvements that are coming up between Milltown Road and Route 1, or do we expect that's going to help?
I think as we end up getting Riders Lane to have 2 additional lanes, and Route 18 ends up removing the kink on Lawrence Brook, which has been something that I experienced for the last 23 years. Those are some slight improvements. It seems to me what's really needed, since we all have this love affair with the car, is that you need additional lanes going in that direction. I don't see the Department of Transportation providing the money for that, And I don't see the electorate being willing to be taxed, whether it's for gasoline or it's for property or it's for income or it's for sales tax, to pay for those additional lanes. And if those conditions exist, it seems to me that there may be a need to change our expectations. Not to believe that we can drive on Route 18 and do 50 miles an hour on average, but that my grandmother's expectations, when she used to drive down for that wonderful day from Harrison to Keensburg, and she would give herself 3 hours to get there, which today you'd expect to be able to do in 45 minutes, even with all the traffic. It seems to me it is maybe more an issue of expectations and what we want to get out of these things than what we can expect if we keep on crowding this area.
It seems like from what we're all saying that we're going to have to learn to live with Route 18, and we can expect some improvements to make it a little more tolerable. But we need to adjust our expectations. I agree with you, Doris, that mass transportation certainly is the answer. You cannot shop or go to work in central New Jersey without getting in your car. But that too takes a lot of money, and it takes real estate, and it's hard for me to see that unless we have some incredibly charismatic leader at state level, and Tom Kean certainly is, but someone even more than he is, who can muster everybody in the state to come up with the money, we're not going to see mass transit happen much any sooner than we're going to see road improvements happen. But the future is always unpredictable, so we can be optimistic even though we can't see, I suppose, even though we can't see the end in sight from here. I want to thank all three of you for being with me. It's been, I hope, informative, and I hope not too depressing or discouraging to those who watched. I didn't mean it to be that way, because it would appear that we will see some improvement over the next few months, and then over the next few years a continuing effort in this direction. So thank you all very much again.
Thank you very much.